I've been asked today to talk about the relationship between the Star Wars films and mental health. Over the series of films, several psychological features are portrayed. George Lucas himself describes how he was influenced by both Kurosawa, the Japanese film director, and also the writer Joseph Campbell, and in particular Campbell's work, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Campbell himself drew on the work of the psychologist and psychiatrist Carl Jung, and particularly his ideas of the archetypes of the unconscious and how these input on myth and folklore. And these are themes that Lucas portrayed in the films, particularly around the wise old man with Obi-Wan Kenobi, the dark shadow with Vader, and also the anima with Princess Leia. And also the idea of the character arc of Luke, from the hero progressing from existence on a sort of planet of a desert and working as a farmer to being a galactic hero. So we see this kind of theme throughout various myths and legends throughout time. But an arc that may be more relevant to us as mental health researchers is that of Anakin. So Anakin is, as people know, Luke's father, but we introduced to him in the first film, The Phantom Menace, where he's born as a slave. We see him escape slavery as he gets taken on by the Jedi Order, and then again how he manages to develop primacy in the Clone Wars and working with Obi-Wan, but also ultimately how he falls to the dark side. And his fall again is linked to the trauma of loss, and how he loses Padme in childbirth and the grief of that. But ultimately with Anakin we see redemption at the end in the Return of the Jedi film, where Luke confronts him as his father and Anakin, Vader, ultimately saves Luke from the Emperor. More generally, the Star Wars films offer us a rich way of thinking about emotions, and you see the two different views between the Jedi having a view of emotions which should be controlled or ignored or oppressed, whereas the Sith had an equally strange view as emotions being dangerous and linked to power to be embraced, whereas in reality, most of us, emotions are a normal feature of our existence. We have to manage them in the best way as we can. The final feature that's of interest that I think is portrayed in the films is an issue about twins. So we know that Leia and Luke are twins separated at birth. So again, this is a common research design where we see twins and how they grow up and try and dissect out the genetic and the environmental influences on psychological outcomes, and also the more general issue of prediction. So a friend of mine quite commonly uses a slide from the film showing Anakin as a young boy with a shadow of Vader behind. And the idea is a lot of mental health research is about trying to predict outcomes and delivering care to those who need it most early enough to prevent these outcomes developing. So looking at the most recent films, I guess there are two themes that echo through. One is an Oedipal conflict. So you can see this idea of the son and the father. So in the original trilogy, there is always the battle between Vader and Luke. And as mentioned, ultimately, that leads with Luke not slaying his father and standing back, and Anakin or Vader survives that battle but dies by another way. But also in parallel, we see in the later films, Kylo, who's a new sort of Dark Lord in the new trilogy, slaying his father, who's Han Solo in the films. It's a common theme here. What we don't know is the trajectory of these heroes, and what the last film may reveal to us. So The Last Jedi showed us a Luke who was very different from this compassionate, caring, involved man, and in Return of the Jedi, one who's withdrawn away in isolation and meditation, who does intervene, but only to distance through kind of astral force powers. And some people say this is a Luke who's disappointed by the way his career in life has fallen out, who has developed, how he's disappointed by the Jedi Order and his own training. What we don't know is how Kylo's choices will now lead into the future, how his choices will lead into the last film, and particularly his relationship with Rey, whether that will be a battle or a force of unity in the future. And please listen to the podcast I'm doing with Dr. Jen Cumming. We're talking about her important work in mental skills training with athletes. So if you recall looking back at the Star Wars films, a lot of it is around Luke's training, particularly with Yoda on Dagobah in Empire Strikes Back, and how mental training can help improve peak performance.